both our law students who are LLB students, but also the greater public. And of course, you will see that today we are joined by attorneys, by advocates, by other interested parties in the public sphere. And I'm more than excited today to introduce our keynote speaker, our speaker today. Mine is ready to introduce him. I'm not here to speak much. It is none other than Dr. Matthews Posa, who needs no introduction. Dr. Nakedi Matthews Posa, as you know, is an attorney. He's also a very established anti-apartheid activist who has been active, at least, and I'm not giving away his age, but for more than 50 years.
What amount did you even consider it? Yes or no?
He has been, and sorry, I ask other panelists to mute, please. He's been active in the legal sphere and, of course, in politics, which explains today's topic. For many, many years, and of course, Dr. Posa, as you know, is a native of Bombela, Nelspruit, where he was born, and of course, he has a very illustrious history. He's known as one of the first 4 members of the ANC to enter South Africa from exile in 1990 in order to start the process of negotiation with the National Party government. There are so many accolades there as a result of the first fully inclusive democratic elections. Dr. Posa was appointed as the first premier of Mpumalanga in 1994, a position which he held until 1999. And of course, Dr. Posa is known for many innovations that during his time in office, he pioneered planning interaction between the private sector and government. And of course, he also spearheaded Nelson Mandela's reconciliation initiatives between the government and the Afrikaans-speaking community. So it'll be interesting what he thinks about the current situation with Donald Trump. And of course, he was also elected to the post of Treasurer General of African National Congress in 2007. He has had many, many hats, which he's also got a business career. He's a businessman, he's an attorney, serves on various boards. And of course, we are more than excited to introduce him to this very fascinating topic, which was chosen deliberately, given Dr. Posa's history and career. The topic is lawfare in South Africa. Myth or reality, the role of law in politics in post-democratic society, so post-democratic South Africa. So I don't want to go into his lecture, but he will explain to you what all this is. And of course, the trick is that the term lawfare is similar to warfare. But let me hand over to our keynote speaker, Dr. Matthews Posa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for introducing me after you invited me. And you chose a very good topic. I don't know whether it's because I was a military commander or not, but I welcome the topic, lawfare, the role of law and the rule of law. Lawfare is a term unfamiliar to many. It's a real deal, and its use is rapidly increasing. We better get used to it. Today, I'm introducing it to you, and in the next few minutes, I'll explore with you its meaning as you realize that it's been around you, and all the time while perhaps you did not realize that there was a specific term to describe it. Lawfare has been around you. So let's start with its meaning. In normal parlance, its definition, but I want to restrict myself to meaning. And then examine how it has played out in South Africa. and elsewhere. Simply stated, lawfare is a discussion on the strategic use of law to pursue political objectives. A discussion on the strategic use of law to pursue political objectives. Others will say the abuse of law. Do you agree that it's a real thing? It is a real thing. What example do you think of as I delve into it? While the judiciary and the courts have tried to play their role, maintaining constitutionalism and political accountability, there's an increasing perception that legal tools are being used more and more for political gain. And this raises concerns about the politicization of the legal system. Lawfare has critical implications for the rule of law. It has got critical implications for democratic integrity and trust in the legal processes and governance. Post-apartheid South Africa presents a compelling case study and in the interaction of law and politics. Since the adoption of a constitutional democracy in 1994, the law has become a key arena for political contestations. Lawfare as a term and practice has emerged as both a descriptor of legal accountability and a rhetorical shield for embattled politicians. The central question explored here is whether lawfare in South Africa represents a genuine political strategy, or whether it is an allegory designed and used to delegitimize legal oversight. How do you conceptualize lawfare? Initially coined in a military context, lawfare, as I said earlier, now broadly refers to the use of legal mechanisms, systems, and processes to achieve political, strategic, or ideological objectives. It includes a range of practices, including strategic litigation, abuse of judicial commissions, selective prosecutions, and bureaucratic delays. As a caution, at the outset, I emphasize that describing any action as lawfare must be applied with all proper considerations because, and I stress, one, not all high-profile legal actions constitute lawfare, and two, not all claims of lawfare are baseless. What is the historical and legal context in South Africa? We need to pose this question. The post-1994 South African Constitution enshrined the rule of law and judicial independence as core principles. However, with increased judicial oversight over political matters such as corruption, executive accountability, and the functioning of Chapter 9 institutions, the legal system has become deeply intertwined with political development. The line between legal redress and political weaponization has become increasingly blurred. Examples of negative lawfare include the strategic use of lawsuits to burden or discredit opponents, the criminal prosecution of political figures based on politicized evidence, the manipulation of judicial processes to suppress dissent or remove electoral rivals, the selective enforcement of laws to benefit specific actors or regimes. While every democratic society requires robust legal mechanisms to hold individuals accountable, the difference between legitimate legal scrutiny and lawfare lies in one, intent, two, proportionality. When legal structures are mobilized not for justice but for political will, they become tools of coercion rather than bastions of fairness and justice. Negative lawfare subverts the rule of law, which presupposes that laws are applied consistently, impartially, and transparently. Lawfare erodes these basic tenets by 1, politicizing the judiciary and requiring the courts to descend into the arena and make decisions that other arms of government should rightly make. We've seen this many times in this country. This imparts the real and perceived objectivity of the judiciary and erodes public trust in the courts. 2, subverting due process when targeted investigation bypasses routine procedures or exploits procedural loopholes. This breeds cynicism and polarization and distrust, especially when legal outcomes are increasingly viewed not through the lens of truth, but as outcomes of fictional power struggles. We have all lived through the years when institutions such as the NPA, Public Protector, where you were, and the Hawks face allegations of capture, bias, and political interference. Let's use a few case studies to explain what lawfare is and how it erodes the rule of law. South African case studies. Case number 1, Jacob Zuma's legal battles. Jacob Zuma's protracted legal entanglements epitomize the debate around lawfare. His supporters argue that the judiciary has been co-opted and is complicit in targeting and any so-called political enemies, while others maintain that legal processes are a necessary check on executive abuse. Zuma's imprisonment for contempt of court in 2021 triggered violent unrest, illustrating the fraught intersection of law, politics, and public legitimacy. More recently, President Zuma's counsel, in trying to protect the president from litigation, introduced a number of interlocutory proceedings to have the matter set aside. When all the options fail, counsel then argues that the case against the president should be dismissed due to the delays in bringing the matter to trial to the Office of the Public Protector. Under Busisio Mkhwebane, the Public Protector's Office became a flashpoint for accusations of political bias and institutional dysfunction. Controversial reports, many of which were overturned by courts, total overturned, spared political battles and litigation that many saw as lawfare waste from within one of our Chapter 9 institutions. One of the biggest questions asked was, when is enough enough? And for how long can political figures continue to take the court's time, notwithstanding loss after loss after loss after loss on the same point of law? The Zondo Commission. 3. While lauded for exposing state capture, the Zondo Commission also faced criticism for being politicized. Some questioned the strategic timing of testimonies and the selective nature of scrutiny. Nonetheless, its reliance on legal frameworks for uncovering corruption exemplifies lawfare use as a tool of democratic accountability. What are comparative case studies? It's good for us in this academic environment to do so, to examine this. In Kenya, judicialization of politics. I hope I've chosen my words carefully here. In 2017, Kenya's presidential election was nullified by the Supreme Court. The significant decision was hailed as a triumph for judicial independence. However, it also sparked accusations of lawfare, with the judiciary accused of being manipulated by political interests. Kenya's case underscores the fine line between judicial courage and perceived overreach. Similarly, and more recently, in the Mozambique national elections, we all witnessed that. In Nigeria, second example, selective prosecution. In Nigeria, successive administrations have been accused of using anti-corruption bodies like the Economic and Financial Crime Commission, the EFCC as it's called, to target opposition figures while protecting allies. The appearance of selective justice has fueled claims of lawfare and undermined trust in the judiciary. In Brazil, I did say will scratch the world. Operation Carwash, Lava Jato, as they called it. Operation Carwash, which led to the imprisonment of former President Lula da Silva, who's now president, was initially praised globally. However, leaked messages between prosecutors and judges reveal political motivations, fueling accusation of lawfare. Why did prosecutors and judges WhatsApp one another on a case like this one? Lula's eventual release and re-election suggest that illegal tools can have both suppressive and restorative effects on political trajectories. In the United States, if I may stretch up to that, the Trump indictments, the legal challenges facing Donald Trump, including multiple indictments, have provoked allegations of lawfare from his supporters. Critics argue these prosecutions are essential to uphold the rule of law. The U.S. case is an excellent example of how legal accountability and political mobilization can collide in hyper-partisan environments. The legal institutions and democratic resilience. In all the cases discussed so far, the strength and credibility of legal institutions, and specifically judiciary, are critical. Where there is lack of integrity, allegations of abuse and manipulations are more likely to find fertile ground. South Africa's judiciary has often been praised as a bulwark against executive overreach. Yet it is not immune to reputational damage. Chapter 9 institutions and political figures must be held to rigorous standards of impartiality and subjective and inappropriate decision-making by judicial officers must be challenged as soon as it emerges. In this context, both real and perceived abuse must be addressed for integrity and accountability to be upheld. Transparency is the key. Lawfare can protect democracy when used to enforce accountability and transparency, and it must be used for those purposes. However, when deployed selectively or manipulatively, it risks transforming courts into arenas of political vendettas, and that is not the ideal. This dual character necessitates robust institutional norms, political ethics, and legal clarity. Probably the most devastating impact of negative lawfare is its effect on the rule of law, democratic accountability, and public trust in the state institutions. Because once the public uses trust in state institutions, democracy is undermined, governance is undermined. Implications for South Africa and beyond. As you realize, South Africa's experience is not unique, but part of a global trend where courts are becoming central to political disputes. The normative challenge lies in fostering a legal culture that is seen to be both vigilant and fair, capable of distinguishing between lawful oversight and politicized prosecutions, otherwise weaponized prosecutions. When citizens perceive the justice system as a stage for elite power struggles, their belief in the state's legitimacy, fairness, and moral authority is shaken to the roots. This paves the way for disengagement, and we only must look at the turnout at the last elections. Unrest. Think Arab Spring, when the public has lost confidence completely in government, or populist backlash. In my view, to avoid the dystopian use of lawfare and the demise of the rule of law and respect for judiciary, what South Africa needs is a much tighter strengthening of judicial independence. And we must pride ourselves with that judicial independence. Our judiciary must never be suspect. It must be stronger measures promoting institutional transparency, clear legal safeguards against the misuse of structures such as the NPA, SIU, and Public Protector's Office, and fostering a civic culture that respects both legal and democratic norms. Legal practitioners and state officials must be held to the highest ethical standards, and there must be consequences for those who abuse legal processes for political purposes. As South Africa grapples with deep political divisions, institutional reform, and economic uncertainty. The challenge is not only to defend the law from politics, but to reclaim it as a space for justice, truth, and democratic renewal. It is this that will determine whether lawfare becomes a pathology, a sickness, or a sign of a democratic maturation. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Dr. Posa, for such an illuminating journey, as it were. And of course, I'm glad you took it internationally, because it is something that has international roots. You would have seen recently in Cote d'Ivoire, one of the leading candidates, Mr. Thiam, was disqualified from running for the election later this year, and of course he was seen as a front runner. So those kind of dynamics are obviously quite interesting in terms of how we but maybe if I can just tease your brain slightly, Dr. Posa, because one of the things you indicated was the issue of strengthening of judicial independence. We've got now allegedly independent office of the Chief Justice. So what measures would you want, in addition to what is currently in place, to be sort of practical measures that can be created to ensure that judges are conscious of such things? I know there's also the South African Judicial Education Institute, which is known as SAJEG, which trains judges. Maybe I don't know, maybe we should get you, Dr. Posa, to train some of these judges to be conscious of the political climate as well, because some of them, just by concluding my point, may have been colleagues with you in the ANC. I can use Albie Sachs, for example, as an example, who then went to become a very eminent judge. Could that be a challenge in that some of the judges battle to transition from one hat to the other? But anyway, let me just open up that kind of conversation back to you. Thanks.
Maybe I should start this way.
Yes.
The way we crafted the Constitution, and I take responsibility with my other colleagues, was to insist on the old principle of Montesquieu, of separation of power. But that is the source of this separation of power, that there will be the executive, there will be the executive, the National Assembly, or whatever you call it, the lawmakers, and there will be the judiciary. This is guided by the Montesquieu old principle of separation of power. If we all respect that, the politicians know that whatever law they pass, it could be subject to be tested in court, and they abide by the finding of the courts at the highest apex. Then we have discipline in the system of our democracy, because everybody is disciplined. But then that's my opening point. My other point, coming to where you ended up, is that yes, maybe I should share this with you, which many people don't know in this country. After we finished writing the Constitution, after Charles Wilson became the first Chief Justice, but he came to me and he said to me, Matthew, you wrote the Constitution with all of us. I would like you to be in the Constitutional Court. My answer was no. He said, why? I said, I think I'm politically contaminated, so I don't think I'll be fair to sit on the. So I refused. I refused to be a judge of the Constitutional Court. But he said, but Albie has agreed. You referred to Albie. I said, well, I don't know. Albie, when we were in exile, did not carry an AK-47. He did not command an army. I did. So I'm contaminated. I look at things with the prism of a commander want to win a war against the enemy. So how do I detox myself? How do I detox myself and sit there as a judge and pretend that, this thing is not cooking in me? So I refuse to be a judge. Sorry, I mean, now I'm not agreeing to be a judge. So, but I think the point I'm making is there has to be independence. Your question is not innocent. The transitioning must happen. And people who agree to be judges must understand that they have to be very independent. They must have made up their mind they will be above their own previous histories, and they'll serve the nation as judges. It is really up to their conscience. Like it was up to my conscience to say yes, I will serve, or no, and I said no.
No, thanks for that illumination, Dr. Post. And then, of course, there is the, you mentioned a few examples, Jacob Zuma, but of course, by far, the most interesting one, obviously, is Jacob Zuma. And I dare say Lula and Trump. It would seem, would you say then, Dr. Posa, that Lawfare seems to be a political career maker? Because I know you were elected in Polokwane during the height of that particular situation. And one of the issues that were being raised was that there was a suspicion that the Scorpions, etc., were being used to settle political scores. But just as a way of saying, look, would you then say Lawfare, by way of the analogy that I've made, that can we say, therefore, law and politics are inextricably linked in South Africa? Or can we comfortably say is there a way of separating the two?
Well, I'm one of those who led the charge against the Scorpions, and I confess, because I think they were very weaponized and very selective, and I made those statements, you can read them on the record, and it became very difficult to deal with the way they were handling the various players on the political scene. They became a weapon in the hands of those who were having the political advantage, and it was not healthy for justice, for democracy. Therefore, I'm one of those who wrote papers critiquing the Scorpions. There's not everything was wrong about them, but when they had this cutting edge of being selective, having a selective morality of justice, I had a problem as a lawyer, total problem. And they poisoned that conference. So it became something to kick around, which should not have happened.
Yes, and of course, lately the controversy continues, Dr. Posa, to say, and this is a hot potato that I'm just about to drop, where someone will say, if Matthews Posa or someone else was found with hundreds of thousands of US dollars in their possession undeclared, they would get into trouble. But the current dispensation, the legal bodies, courts, public protector, etc., have found nothing wrong with that, with the sitting president. Would we say then, are we saying that we are not safe from the so-called African big man syndrome, where there is no accountability for the, in other words, there are two sets of legal systems, for the powerful and the powerless, if I can put it that way?
As a jurist, you must always avoid the temptation of shortcuts. You remember that when the report of Nhlapo came out, I took the country by surprise. I did an analytical dissection of that report. And I went on television and shared my law firm's analytical dissection of the report. And the way I approached it was, if you are going to have a commission like that one, you must take all the evidence into account, right? Number one. In their own report, they say there are 8 institutions, 8, who were investigating the Palapala matter. But they did not look at the report. How can you call it a complete investigation when you admit yourself that there are 8 institutions, but you did not look at the report? So I went on the attack. I said it's a hogwash.
Yes.
It's flippant, because they should have looked at investigated the 8 institutions. And before I went on television, just to share with you and your listeners, I spoke to the late Tito Mboweni. May his soul rest in peace. He was a governor. I said, Mr. Former Governor, Mr. Minister, tell me, how should I approach this matter? He says you should get the paper trail of that money. If you have a paper trail that moves from the border, whatever point of the border, to that sofa, then you can argue that the president is liable. But if there's no paper trail that links him with the movement of money to his house, you have a problem. It is an area of doubt today.
Yes.
I went to the Reserve Bank. Imagine I'm about to go for a TV interview. I'm consulting. I'm saying to the Reserve Bank, do you have a report of paper trail of the money which ended up on the president's sofa? They said, we don't have. I said, guys, so how is he linked to the money? They said, we can't say to the Reserve Bank he is linked to the money because we have no paper trail. And that's an auditing way of looking at it, not the legal way. The auditors will want to say, how does that money link to me or you? Who put it there? This case is sub judice at the moment. People are facing trials. Maybe the less we say, the better.
Yes. Okay. No, thanks a lot. Yeah, no, because obviously our audience, the reason why I'm raising this, Dr. Posa, is obviously that our audience consists primarily of LLB students, but of course there are young lawyers and other people in the sector who obviously want to see how this thing works. Is it an animal farm or is it something that and I would also maybe ask our administrator to open up the chat a bit for maybe we've got some hands and 3 hands. I will take the first 3 right now. Winnie Kumede is the first hand, and I'll give an opportunity for Winnie to ask Dr. Posa a question, and we'll take it from there. And I'll ask our IT team to make that possible. I hope that Winnie can be unmuted. Winnie, you can proceed. If you are able to talk, please proceed. Winnie Kumede.
Winnie is very welcome.
And if not, can our IT people please ensure that that is possible? Because I can see Winnie's hand is up and I see she's muted. Can we unmute?
That's lawfare. You're not allowing her in.
Yes. Can we? Apologies for that. I'm just trying to communicate with that team because I don't have the powers in front of me to. Winnie, are you able to talk? What about Reginald? Is he able to? Reginald Mofokeng? No, what's going on there?
Yeah, there's a lot of warfare here. We're not allowing people to speak.
Yes. Because that's the first thing that.
One freedom of speech. That's crazy.
Just 1 second. Let me just call one of the IT guys. Shouldn't be long.
I asked them to unmute, so I asked them to unmute. They must have to unmute and talk. So I'm handling that. Yeah. I asked I do. I asked them. So what I do is that I would ask them to unmute on their side to talk. So they are not doing that. I can do that. I'm doing that now. Yeah, I'm definitely doing that. So they must talk. So I don't know if they unmuted on their side or not. So I do that, and if they're not talking, I'm going to the next person, to the next person. All right, sir.
Advocate, can you hear me? Advocate? Hi, how are you, Advocate? Can you hear me? Is Reginald speaking? Hello? Advocate, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well, Reginald.
All right, this is Reginald. Let me just...
Yes,
start by-
please proceed and ask your question.
Yes, thank you very much, Advocate, for procuring us this legal mind, Mr. Dr. Paul Posa. I know him personally. I used to stay in Pumalanga when he was still the premier there. The question I wanted to ask the advocate, the doctor, is that in respect of what we are now experiencing as the people here on the ground of this political interference, is there no way where now something can be allowed for the people on the masses on the ground to try to come up with a structure which will ensure the separation of power, more so in trying to stop the judges to be to interfere or to be weaponized in judicial matters. Can't we, maybe, because by the way, according to my opinion, I see that maybe these legal minds, it is difficult for them to, why can't we just shift it to the people on the ground so that they can sit down and they've been given that opportunity to come with a strategy to combat it? Hello, Advocate, can you hear me?
Very well, very well. Yes, I'll hand over the question to Dr. Posa.
Okay.
Reginald, thank you for your question. You are a very good citizen of this country. You're entitled to make those observations. But the fact of the matter is the masses are represented in the National Assembly and then the National Council of Provinces. Those are their institutions. At the provincial level, they're for the provincial legislatures. And that's where they should hold their representative accountable in terms of whether or not the separation of power is being observed. A route that does not follow that what I'm saying now will lead in chaos in our country. We have to observe the separation of power. The masses themselves elect the National Assembly and NCOP. They must hold them accountable. And if they don't listen to them, they must not vote for them. It's very simple. And we saw it in the elections last year when there was discontent in the country with the African National Congress, and it tanked from 57% to 40%. That's what will happen. That's how the masses punishes you if you are in power. Rather than interfere with the judiciary, deal with the political parties. Deal with those who represent you in the National Assembly and provincial assemblies. That's my answer. I believe in a state of law and order.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Posa. There is a very interesting question, which I think you know him very well. I'm giving him his question a lot of prominence. There's a question in the chat there from none other than J. Piscosana. You know J. Piscosana from the Department of Justice.
I know
who is
him.
also from Mpumalanga.
Hey, this is
Currently, yes, you know, there's no one who doesn't. Yes.
Isn't Pumalanga and easy?
Yes, yes.
Come, JB.
So JP, he says, Africa Malonga asked whether the Office of the Chief Justice advances the independence of the judiciary. He says, my comment is that it does not do so, but is a step towards that ultimate goal. We are still far from that goal. I've been writing a monograph on that subject in which you played an indelible contribution in that space. He's referring to, or I don't know whether he's referring to me or to you, Dr. Posa, because I also worked with him. And he already suggests further engagements towards that. So I believe he's suggesting that it doesn't seem to be, he's not of the view that it's playing an adequate role in a fair and independent judiciary. So let's hand over to, I don't know, Winnie was first, Winnie Kumeda. I don't know if she's now able to, but if not, George Shilenge. George Shilenge, please proceed and ask Dr. Posa your question.
Good evening, Advocate, and good evening, Dr. Posa.
Good evening, sir.
Yes, I need to take this back to, I don't know if whether it will be relevant, but I need to take this back.
Please speak louder, George. I'm struggling to hear you. I don't know if it's just me, but just for everybody's sake, if you can just raise your voice a bit.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, it's much better now. It's now worse, actually. I don't know what's going on with George.
Can you hear me now? Advocate?
Yes, please. Yes, certainly.
I need to take Dr. Posa back to 2007. I think he was a prominent, member. At that conference, I remember President Jacob was protesting President Thabo Mbeki. My question, which is still hanging, President Thabo Mbeki was there. So what I wanted to know from Dr. Posa is that generally, is it or is a lawfare not being proposed to anybody, whereby not a law compromise.
Dr. Posa, can you hear George?
Nothing.
George, please type your question because we're struggling. Even I am struggling.
Okay, thank you.
I want to be fair to George, but I want to hear what he's asking.
Yeah, he's sort of crackling. I'm struggling. I am struggling myself. So I don't know. The next person who's there, Mr. Dennis Juru, are you able to unmute your mic?
George,
Yes,
George Shilenge is asking a question around former President Mbeki. Maybe we should give him a chance down the line.
Yes, if you can possibly maybe sort out the microphone or type it, because I, just like you, Dr. Posa, I was struggling to hear him. We don't want to censor him, but unfortunately, I could see that you were also struggling.
I can't hear him.
Yeah, I can't hear him either. So, Mr. Juru, let's hand over to Mr. Dennis Juru. Over to you.
Thank you, Advocate Malunga. Good evening, Jurist Posa. My name is Dennis Juru. I'm a student. I'm a third-year LLB student at Regenesis. I've got two simple questions to you, Jurist. The first one is, from all the types of lawfares, which one do you think exists or coexist in South Africa? And my second question is, how do you distinguish between the advantages of the incumbent and lawfare? Thank you. Back to you.
I think it was very clear, but I think it was also clear in the examples I gave in my speech, which I think we should share about South Africa. I mean, the debates are around the very first example about the former President Zuma. And those debates are still raging, even today. And there's different views. He views it as an injustice to himself, and his supporters do that. But the justices of the law say, no, but it's not injustice. It's a proper administration of justice. So that still exists in South Africa, if you use that example at the moment. If you take to Brazil, maybe I should use that example, which I did not. I quoted Brazil in a different case of Lula. But if you look at the guy who was the president before Lula now, his charge was high treason, that he wanted to overthrow the government. And his view is that he didn't. He thinks Lula is abusing the law against him now that he's president. It exists in Brazil. And then, of course, Trump himself, this lawsuit keep cropping now and then. And he keeps boxing while he's president. He himself thinks there's a lawfare going on against him. So it's all over. So don't expect them. It's all over the world. And the chair is referred now to the African example of a guy who was stopped from being a president. So it's not just in South Africa. It's all over. It's not going to go away overnight.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Dr. Posa. Let me just read something else from the chat so that the people in the chat are not left out. Yes. I think Emmanuel. Okay, let me go further up.
But can they hear us speak throughout?
Yes, very well, Dr. Posa, very well. A very interesting question. Well, one comment from Bongani Kolisi. Is it Bongani Kolisi? He says, then we should not have a case then with the guys who stole the money at the president's house.
He must go and testify in court. The consequence. You remember my caution was that it's sub-judice, so I wouldn't want to go deep with you. There's a lawyer, I must respect.
Yeah, so I deliberately opened this up, Dr. Posa, because I don't want our students to feel like they're being censored as they're studying law. It's important that it's very important. And then, of course...
But fortunately, I'm talking to a man who turned the thing around.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm the only lawyer who came in full force attacking Chapo and tore the report into pieces. And Parliament accepted my argument without they plagiarized my argument by accepting that the report is flawed. They did. and the ANC conference still re-elected Senator Ramaphosa. And some of the guys were arguing, but you had this report is flippant, you know. But that did not wash out. That did not wash away the case. That's why the case is still outstanding. As to the guys who are now being charged, whether or not they'll be found guilty, the jury is out there.
Yes, indeed. And then with George, we couldn't hear George, Dr. Posa. He has now put his comment in the chat. He says, "Good day, Advocate and Dr. Posa. I was trying to ask a question with regards to the ANC conference held in Polokwane. Dr. Posa, where you were elected as Treasury General."
Yes.
He says President Zuma was contesting President Mbeki, who happened to be contesting for the third time. My question is it not a compromise of the law? He says, is it not a compromise of, gosh, I don't know why is it not a compromise of the lawfare when a leader contests a presidential position for the third time? Or maybe he's trying to say, was it not unlawful?
I'd like to help him, Mr. Challenger. I still have to say name here. Mr. Challenger, I hope you can hear me. Yeah. You see, I wanted to make a clinical separation between the ANC as a party and the state. The state gives a president 2 terms, 5 years as president. Mbeki did not ask to be a president of the country 3rd term. He asked to be president of the ANC 3 times. I hope I'm clear. And the ANC constitution does not have a term limit. You can run 10 times, 100 times to be president, as long as you get elected. So it's a difference between the constitution of the state, which limits the presidency to 2 years, and of the ANC, which does not limit it. So there's nothing wrong, Mbeki did.
Okay, yes. Yeah, no, that's...
You understand? Mbeki did nothing wrong. He was entitled to go for 3rd term.
Yes, and then another question from Dion. He says, Dr. Posa, to what extent does the current application of constitutional rights, such as the right to a fair trial or parliamentary privilege, sorry, 1 second. Such as the right. So let me read the question again. To what extent does the current application of constitutional rights, such as the right to a fair trial or parliamentary privilege, enable South African politicians to evade prosecution or delay accountability, and what legal reforms will strike a balance between protecting individual rights and ensuring justice? So in other words, Dion is saying, he's asking, how does the current framework, things like a fair trial, etc., do they allow people to evade accountability? And how would you do it differently?
I'm going to be very controversial in answering that question, yes, because it provokes such. Number one, the law enforcement in our country, the NPA, must have teeth, and it must be allowed to bite, irrespective of who you are. Yes. There's a perception that the law enforcement does not have teeth, or if it has got teeth, it does not bite some, it bites others.
It bites others. Is it Animal Farm?
Yeah, it's Animal Farm. And I'll tell you what besides somewhat controversial. If you take the Zono Commission, there are about 91 people who are mentioned there. I phoned the head of the Hawks. Have you been asked to investigate these 91 cases? You know what the answer was? No. So that question is justified.
Yes,
you know?
Yes.
It's justified to say, why, if these guys were mentioned by Zondo, why is the law enforcement agency not investigating them? They must be investigated. And if you find there's nothing wrong, then it's fine. If you find there's something wrong, then charge them. That's what I mean, teeth. So that's areas gray. And that question is justified. So we should give assurance that where politicians are implicated, because some of them are ministers right now, but they've been mentioned by Zondo.
By Zondo, yes.
Yeah,
yes,
I just want to talk straight. So those type of things create doubt in the minds of people about whether or not the law is fair. So we need more decisiveness on the law enforcement.
Yes. Thanks, Dr. Posa. By the way, Dr. Posa, this engagement of ours, it will probably have more people watching it after it is done on YouTube, etc., online, shared, etc., than now. So obviously, I think your nuggets of wisdom will still be being watched a year from now. So that's the advantage of an online conversation. But we've got a very interesting question, which, and let me just explain. I think I was explaining to Dr. Posa how the current Regenesis LLB is working currently. Most of our biggest numbers are online, students who study online. And they are geographically all over the country, if not all over the continent. And then, of course, we've got contact students. So, and then, of course, many of them are working professionals. So there's like Humoso Lekwale. I don't know if he's one of our students, but he's definitely a working professional. He says Umuso Lehwale says, good evening, Dr. Posa and Africa Malunga. I'm an employee of the Department of Justice under the Magistrates Commission. You see, sometimes when I'm talking, the chat moves. Sorry about that. I need to go back to it again. I'm an employee of the Department of Justice under the Magistrates Commission, and the question I have is that our judiciary is under attack, and our magistrates are under attack. What can be done to protect our judicial system? So that is his or her question, Umutso. He works for so I suppose he's working as an insider who feels attacked. So maybe if I can rephrase, how do we, Dr. Post, how do we then manage a situation where judges and magistrates feel attacked as well? When say politicians and others say things about them.
But they have been attacked. The judge, up to the highest court, they've been attacked by politicians, and it is the responsibility of our own government to educate the population about these principles we're talking about of separation of power, and the need to respect the role of the executive, the rule to respect the role of the legislature, and the need for the executive and the legislature to understand that they are subject to the rules by the court. But you need to educate your population. Our democracy is very young. It's very, very young. This type of things will happen as we entrench and educate ourselves as a nation about the different roles of the institutions and the need for our law-abiding citizens to respect the decisions of the court. But we cannot be law-abiding while we disrespect our courts. We are not law-abiding, we're a bunch of criminals. We must behave ourselves,
I think one thing that those who don't know Dr. Posa is that he tells it as it is, and he has been very successful as that way, telling it as it is. Mr. Juru says, I'm not sorry, this thing moves a lot.
Mr. Juru asked a question earlier.
Yes. He said, I see that he says it's not answered. I'm asking about the type of lawfare that exists in South Africa among all 4 types of lawfares, with regards to using. Sorry, you see, the chat box is a moving target. So sometimes when you're talking, it just gets carried away and moves.
Yeah, but Mr. Juru, with respect, we gave him an example of the Zuma case. But it's continuing, and there are different views on it.
Mm.
The Zuma people feel that the lawfare is against him unfairly, and others feel, well, he deserves to be punished. I gave that as an example in my speech, and I repeated it. And I also went into other jurisdictions. So I don't know what other part of my answer does not satisfy.
Yes. And then, of course, let me give, JB says he's referring to me that I was involved in the formation of the OCJ from a policy perspective. And then he says, by declining the nomination, gosh, this thing misbehaves a lot. Maybe it's because when someone is typing, it starts moving automatically. Just 1 second. By declining the nomination to serve in the judiciary, Dr. Posa made a perfect conscious decision, which I now understand. He says what boggles the mind is, why were you not asked to be a minister of justice? That's nothing to Dr. Posa.
I've got an answer to that. I've got an answer to that.
Yes.
Yeah. Let me answer him. In the scheme of things at the time of 94, I was in charge of the police portfolio, amongst many other things.
Yes.
I was in the police board. I wrote the police norms. I argued for the separation of the federal state of policing, and the norms and standards at the top and all that. And many people in NC thought, this guy must be the first minister of police. Mandela as the president had his own ideas about things. He said, Matthew, we have this right-wing province with many, many right-wing Afrikaners. We wanted to go there and get people coming, working together in that province. So it was not my decision. It was the president's decision, which I respected. He says, you have served nationally. Now I'm deploying to the province. I oblige as a true soldier. I want to serve as president.
Oh, wow, that's Dr. Post. He says he has discussed this with you before. That's JP, just JP's Kosan.
JP knows. JP knows. He's just teasing me.
Yes, and then there was a question. Sorry, this thing keeps on moving. Normal. Sorry. You see, when people are typing, the questions disappear because the new questions are reappearing. But I'll find it.
How long is this interview?
We have about, I think, 10 minutes left. So I decided that to make it about you and the participants.
Okay.
There was an allocated time for me to summarize and whatever. I don't think that's necessary, Dr. Posa. I think it's important. It's important for you to have a full engagement with these guys who want to hear your advice. A very interesting one from Nomala. She says, "What advice would you give to young lawyers who regarding experiences with lawfare and avoiding being caught up in it?"
I said in my opening remark, lawfare is around us. We live with it. We should develop a sense of justice as students, because that's the question.
Yes, and so actually more than one individual has asked that question in terms of the advice.
Yeah, but what the young law student must be instilled with is a pride to say, we carry the banner of justice and fairness. We want to be lawyers. When I was asked what do I want to do as I was a young man, I said, I want to be a lawyer. In those days, there was no human rights in our constitution. We're not recognized as human beings, really. I said, I want to assert human rights. They must be proud to say we want to assert justice and fairness. There must be the standard bearer of what is just, what is fair as lawyers, what is ethical. There must be that high standard bearers of those values as young law students. And we're preparing them to become judges, become magistrates, to become prosecutors. So they must develop a good sense of justice.
Thanks. Yes, and then there was a very fascinating question, which is a hot potato. No more Sorofa. What happened to her question? She says, do you think that it was when it was alleged that you, President Ramaphosa, and Toke Sehwale were plotting against President Begi, would you say that was lawfare?
Let me tell you, it was lawfare 100 out of 100. Because the police were used to investigate innocent 3 citizens, namely myself, Cyril Ramaphosa, and Tokyo, on false charges. It was abuse of power in the extreme. And the police found nothing. That was lawfare. I didn't want to use that as an example because I didn't want to be personal with this important problem.
Yes, sir. Thanks. And then there was Ed Moore who says, why are institutions like SADC always quiet about lawfare? He says, I take an example of why SADC is quiet about, I think it mentions Zimbabwe. I suspect it's also talking about Mozambique, all these problem elections on the African continent. I don't know if that is something that you feel is I know there was the Khampempe commission with Judge Museneke on the Zimbabwe election, which was suffocated by the Mbeki administration. I think those are the kind of things that he's alluding to. But SADC as well, talks about SADC.
Yeah, I'll tell you, that question is very important because we should all be measured by the same standard. law is law, justice is justice, democracy is democracy. We have witnessed in various of those jurisdictions, people feeling that the state machinery have abused power to either win power or legitimize opposition, that type of thing. It has happened across the SADC. So SADC leaders must realize that lawfare prevails in their jurisdiction and be careful how they handle one another. The question is very legitimate.
Yes.
I deliberately gave ourselves as an example and went to Brazil, America, and all over to show that it's an international phenomenon. It's also a continental phenomenon. Like you said, Chair, about the guy who was stopped from being a president,
Yes.
from running.
Yes.
That's
Mr. Tiam.
lawfare.
Mr. Tiam.
Yeah.
Look for him.
They should have been allowed to stand for election and be elected or not be elected, not be stopped by executive for fiat.
Yes, Mr. Tiam, if I can just explain what happened there. They said he has French citizenship as well. And he says, in the Francophone countries, that's quite common. And then he basically said, no. Then said, no, this is not acceptable. They said, no, you can't run. So Zugile, I'm looking for your question, and I think Zugile Ngobo, I've explained that we have a problem with the moving chat. So your question is not being treated unfairly. I'm trying to find it. And I will, as soon as I find it, I will locate it and find it. Just 1 second. And Zugila says, what a profound statement by a veteran who is highly experienced. I'm also trying to find her question. And then Moses Senyelo says, does transformative constitutionalism give governments a platform to amend laws to favor their corruption, or does it wage war against corruption?
Well, it's a part of lawfare. If you're going to abuse the law to suppress, suppress prosecution against the corrupt.
Yes.
The law must be used against the corrupt, not to protect them. So it's not even transformation to change the law for the purpose of protecting the corrupt. It's collusion with corruption.
Indeed. Okay, let's just see if we can find one more question. I am trying to find Zugila's question, but it's not easy because this moves as we are talking. And then Chris says, Dr. Posa, are you aware that many lawyers are no longer practicing law because of the hazards involved and how politics has affected them economically and otherwise? Do you have any words of advice for the potential risks involved with this whole thing? I know you've been an attorney for many years, Dr. Posa, and you are still standing. You've been a lawyer, you've been a politician, a business person, and everything. And he's saying that some people have been kicked out of the profession, I suppose victimized out of the profession.
I've been practicing law, I'm going to be shocking you, for 51 years. Minus 7 years when I was in exile. So I chaired the disciplinary committee of the Law Society for 10 years. I fought against the practice of just terminating lawyers from practice for minor offenses. I said, you should be punitive, but give them a fine. They must learn from their mistakes. And I think the profession has become to accept that little fine is painful enough to make the young lawyers to learn from their mistakes. I introduced that approach to punishment against them. For some of the things were so minor that it didn't deserve to be stuck off the road. I thought it was extreme. Protect the young lawyers. Give them a chance to grow and to learn.
And learn from their mistakes.
Yeah, learn from their mistakes. Initially, that white system was not allowing anyone to learn from their mistakes. It was just cutting their necks every time. And it was too brutal. You know, I had to introduce that as chairman of the DC. And I hope they still continue that practice. Not to condone wrong things by lawyers, because we must protect the public against thieves who are lawyers. You know, that type. One must balance between the two. And let's speak straight about it. You know, there's been lawyers who were thieves. I had to ask one guy to be struck off the road who took 1 million from a widow. I couldn't take it. I thought this is not acceptable at all, you know, in an other matter. But we should, as lawyers, act with integrity. If we don't, then we're betraying the ethics of our profession.
Yes, thanks. Thanks. Zugila's question has finally come. He says, my question was about the interests of the disability sector, noting that Section 9 and 10 of the Constitution continue to be trampled over by leaders and administrators. What can be done to avert this? Zugila, I'm not too sure how that is a lawfare issue. Maybe you can clarify. And then Chipiwa says, how should the judicial and legal professional respond when hitmen use lawfare, such as filing frivolous lawsuits or legal intimidation to obstruct justice or silence witnesses and victims? An example is Ekuruleni businessman Bongani Nshapo was threatened by a hitman after demanding payment, which owed him 2 million. And of course, I think you know, Dr. Kosa, you know, I worked with as deputy private protector for 7 years, and of course, we dealt with a lot of people who were threatened in terms of their physical security as well, in terms of whenever they want to lodge a complaint, whether it's a legal complaint or they want to have litigation. So I think Chipiwa's question is quite valid there. How do you then, you know, manage that space as a lawyer?
But the Chipiwa's question is legitimate, but Chipiwa's question is not placed within what we're discussing. It's placed within the space of law and order. Law and order, yes, the law and order enforcement must protect witnesses, not the judges, but the law and order, the police. These matters must be reported, and therefore they must be acted upon. So that guy who's been blackmailed must report to the police. This is a law and order question.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then let's just have one last person talking. It will just be a lucky packet. Let me have a lady, because I don't... is Mahlatse Mashiane a lady? Because we've had gentlemen talking. If it's a lady, I would allow that person to talk so that we have a balance.
You might say it's a lady when he's a man. What are you going to do?
No, we'll hear the voice. We'll hear the voice. Otherwise, if it's not a lady, Unati Peana can go through. We have had a lot of men speaking, please. If Mahlatse, okay, let's start with Mahlatse. Male or female is fine, Mahlatse, because I mentioned your name. Go ahead. I don't know whether they are muted. It looks like it's back to mute.
Good evening. Good evening. Am I audible?
It's a man. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Good evening, Dr. Posa, and good evening, colleagues. I know that we have deliberated much on the issue of Zuma earlier on when you made your presentation. But something that very intriguing for me is that the Zuma matter with regard to the arms deal has taken so many years with Zuma, deploying a number of tactics to oppose or delays and so on and so forth. I'm not sure in terms of your opinion, what needs to be done in those kind of cases, because I'm just imagining the state would spend so much money to try to defend itself, or and yet the person who says that is innocent has not actually said, let me just go and prove that I'm innocent, in front of a judge and say, I didn't do it, and these are my reasons. I just want to source your opinion on that one. Thank you, Doctor.
It's the easiest question of the evening.
Okay.
Because no accused is obliged to go and say, I'm not innocent. Leave me alone. Those who are accused must prove that the accused is guilty. The onus of proof is on those who allege the allegations, but not on the accused. So why must the accused go and say, listen, I'm guilty or not guilty? Probably the accused will say, I'm not guilty. And then let those who accuse the accused bring their evidence. That's also about basic.
Wow. Oh, that's fascinating.
It is basic. I can see the irritation. Irritation that says, what the hell, this guy is mentioned so many times in the papers. But one must be very careful and say, the accusers must adduce the evidence. It's very simple.
Yes, I see. Is Mr. Carwash's hand up? It was down. Mr. Kundego Carwash was gone up, went off.
He doesn't want me to eat supper this Carwash.
Well, we are we're wrapping up now. I know we've gone slightly over. Ntabi Singh says, hi, Dr. Posa, what is your opinion on the education system? Do you think that we have quality education looking at our current economic and political status? Do you think we're competent enough internationally? I know it's not really on topic, but I suppose it's worth your opinion, Dr. Posa.
The day we are satisfied with our level of education is the day things are about to collapse. We must believe in continuous improvement of our education. And we must slant more towards education which empowers young people. They're not going to learn the history of Jan van Riebeeck. They must learn a new history. There must be a new history. They must learn artificial intelligence. The world has moved on. So we must improve our education to respond to the demands of the economy. Otherwise, our guys will get degrees and be unemployed. And it's already happening.
Yes. And of course, Nelson Tihale, I suppose it's in line with what you just said. What about national dialogue, Dr. Posa? Will it help assist the country? I suspect, anyway, there's always a lot of criticism, Dr. Posa, about white papers, green papers, pink papers, discussion this, discussion that. So I suspect maybe in light of even today's topic, how do we then manage? How do we walk the talk?
You can have the best laws, the best policies, but if you don't implement, they're worth nothing.
Yes.
They're worth nothing. You can have as many commissions of inquiry as possible, and I referred to it in a slide about lawfare. But if you take the report of the commission of inquiry, you don't act on them, like I've said, on them. It's a waste of taxpayers' money. Sorry.
Yes. No, thank you so much, Dr. Posa. We gave people an extra time, some injury time, obviously, for some of this. Like we didn't really have many glitches, and we also had a lot of questions, great attendance, and so I think it's really something that we are really appreciative. But let me just give you the last word, Dr. Posa, to say whatever you want to say to the listeners concerning today's topic, and then we'll wrap it up.
I feel very privileged to be given the opportunity to express my views as a lawyer on lawfare. It's a very important subject matter, and I'm grateful for the way you have led the discussion set, and I'm grateful for the questions. It's a pity we're not in control of time, but we must continue to debate the lawfare issue. They're not going to go away. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We couldn't have had a better keynote speaker. And I know there are many who are going to watch this after online. And please don't hesitate to interact with us and share the questions. And of course, we'll forward some of the interesting comments to Dr. Posa as well. Thank you so much, sir. This was such a pleasure. And goodbye and to everybody, and have a lovely weekend.
You too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.